The offseason is finally over, and the 2026 season is here. We've got stars chasing milestones, contenders loading up for another shot, young teams trying to break through, and even a dynasty run still alive. From playoff heartbreak to teams on the rise, every storyline is in play this season, so let's break down what to expect exactly from each team across the league. The Washington Capitals are in an extremely interesting spot heading into 2026. For nearly 2 decades, everything revolved around Alexander Ovechkin, but now it's clear a new wave is starting to define that team. Now, Ovechkin is still here and still scoring after another 44-goal season, his 14th year hitting the 40-goal mark, but he's no longer the sole engine driving Washington's offense. As he gets older, the supporting cast has stepped into bigger roles. Dylan Strome quietly became one of the most reliable centers in hockey, leading the team with 82 points, while Pierre-Luc Dubois and Alexis Protas added valuable depth up front. Protas at 6'6" with surprising skill finally broke through as a legitimate top 6 piece. Connor McMichael also had a career year, posting 26 goals and 57 points, and he'll be a key piece down the middle behind Strome and Dubois. On the back end, John Carlson remains steady while Jacob Chychrun delivered the kind of impact that the Capitals hoped for with 20 goals and heavy minutes. They may take a small step back, but with guys like Strome, Protas, PLD, Chychrun, and maybe a strong rookie season from Ryan Leonard, Washington should remain firmly in the playoff picture, even if their cup window isn't as wide as it once was. The Hurricanes have been contending for a while, but have never really gotten over the hump of the Eastern Conference Finals, but 2026 could be the season where they prove it. Sebastian Aho, Andrei Svechnikov, and now Nikolai Ehlers bring some serious firepower up front, while the defensive overhaul gives real hope that Carolina can tighten the gaps that have bitten them in the past deep runs. Defense is the big story. Carolina lost key veterans Brent Burns, Dmitry Orlov, and earlier Brett Pesce, and responded by bringing in K'Andre Miller on a long-term deal and relying more on rising pieces like Shane Gostisbehere and Alexander Nikishin. They're probably hoping for another strong season from Seth Jarvis, especially after the postseason he just had. Between the pipes, Carolina re-signed Freddie Anderson for one more season. He hasn't been healthy pretty much the last 3 years, but we know that when he is healthy, he's one of the most reliable guys you can have in between the pipes. They took big swings this offseason. Ehlers, Miller, and because of that, the Hurricanes are yet again built to challenge the East. If their defensive rebuild pays off and Anderson holds up, they should take another step forward. The conference final doesn't have to be the ceiling this time. It should honestly be the expectation. The Devils head into 2026 at a crossroads. They have the core pieces to push forward, but a looming wrench might be that Luke Hughes, their young stud defenseman, hasn't yet signed a deal. And he can miss a lot of time considering they're apparently not even close on a deal. That's going to be a hit to the defense and depth before the puck even drops. Offensively, though, they do have his brother Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt, who remain the 2 pillars that hold this team up. Jack's injury history is a concern, but when healthy, he's elite and one of the best forwards in the entire league. On the other hand, you have Jesper Bratt, who just dropped a monster 88-point season and is locked in long-term. He's the kind of two-way winger who can carry a line in big moments. Nico Hischier is a dependable center, and veteran additions like Connor Brown and Evgeny Dadonov bring experience and some sort of secondary scoring. The Devils were weak 5-on-5 last year and among the bottom third in goals, so they need the supporting cast to step up. On defense, losing Luke Hughes early would force more responsibility onto Simon Nemec, a pivotal year for him to show that he can actually anchor the blue line full-time. Dougie Hamilton is still the stabilizer, but the depth behind him is kinda thin. They didn't make any huge splashes this year. The front office seems pretty committed to the group that they have. The market views them as a solid playoff bet, and they may not be the favorites in the East, but they aren't far off that next tier. They might not be a cup run, but they should be pretty dangerous. The Blue Jackets are in the prove-it phase of their rebuild. 2026 could be where they either tip the balance towards contention or not. Last season, they came within a whisper of the playoffs, and this year, expectations are only rising, especially with the momentum behind some young forwards and the goaltending question looming large. Up front, they have Adam Fantilli and Kirill Marchenko, who emerged as dual 30-goal threats, giving Columbus legitimate top-line punch. They even led the league in 5-on-5 goals for, showing how dangerous their attack can be. The trick is going to be depth with them, and that's where veterans need to step in. Sean Monahan quietly had one of the best seasons of his career, providing stability and secondary offense that the Jackets really needed. With additions like Charlie Coyle, Miles Wood, and Isaac Lundestrom, Columbus hopes to further spread the scoring load and relieve pressure on their young stars. Defense, though, is going to remain a concern. When it was all healthy, Columbus allowed around 2.9 goals per game, but when injuries hit and some of those guys were out, that number ballooned to around 3.6 goals a game. That volatility is definitely the problem. When their game structure breaks, so does their season, and they lose games. The forwards don't really offer much on the defensive side either, so they're going to be leaning heavily on Werenski and Provorov to steady the ship back there. In net, the narrative is shifting. Elvis has been the longtime starter, but his numbers over recent seasons have kind of dipped. The spotlight now falls on Jet Greaves, who pitched a .938 save percentage in the limited stretch of games that he played last year. This season is going to be a real test of whether or not the Blue Jackets overachieved last year, or if they're legitimately taking steps forward. Plenty of players hit career highs, and while that powered them into the playoff chase, the question is whether that production can be repeated. If the young core proves last season wasn't a fluke, and if the goaltending holds up, Columbus could cement themselves as more than just a fun surprise. If not, regression could push them right back into the almost category. The 2026 season feels like a defining one for the Rangers. After missing the playoffs last year, there's pressure to prove that the window for this core has not completely closed. Their new head coach Mike Sullivan steps in with the job of restoring order and getting the most out of a roster that still has plenty of talent on paper. Up front, the spotlight is on balance. Artemi Panarin is heading into a contract year, and while he's still the go-to offensive weapon, the pressure is on for him to deliver at an elite level again. JT Miller, now wearing the C, needs to set the tone both on the ice and in the locker room, and he'll likely have Mika Zibanejad on the wing this year. Vinny Trocheck is going to anchor things down the middle, while Will Cooley is coming off a breakout season and should stick in the top 6. This is also a big year for Alexis Lafreniere to take another step forward, and prospects like Gabe Perreault and Brennan Othman could push their way into meaningful roles. On the back end, defense has to improve. Last season, the Rangers gave up far too many quality chances, leaving Shesterkin to cover for breakdowns. The addition of Gavrikov should help stabilize things back there, and pairing his shutdown style with the puck-moving brilliance of Adam Fox should go really well for New York. If the blue line holds up, Shesterkin has the ability to bounce back into Vezina-caliber form. The Rangers aren't really being talked about as much of some of their metropolitan rivals, but they have the pieces to surprise. New York has every chance to climb back into the playoff mix and maybe even be a contender in the East. The Islanders come into the season with more changes than comfort. They're trying to redefine themselves after a pretty disappointing season last year, and the moves they made this summer signal that they're leaning into a retool rather than chasing the same old formula. This is a transitional year, but one that comes with serious stakes. Barzal is expected to return to his natural center position, hoping to rebound from an injury-battered season last year and anchor that offense. New addition Jonathan Drouin brings experience and skill to the wing, hoping to spark the power play and stabilize secondary scoring. The Isles also count on Emil Heineman, Maxim Shabanov, and prospects like Callum Ritchie to help fill the gaps on offense. Scoring was a glaring issue last year, and it has been for a while, and only a few teams struggled more than the Fish Sticks. So this group has to generate some offense to stay relevant. On defense, the focus is on structure and youth. The team parted ways with Noah Dobson, paving the way for top prospect Matthew Schaefer. Meanwhile, Alexander Romanov locked in long-term, showing the Isles believe in him as a pillar on the defense. This season will tell whether the Islanders are rebuilding or retooling. Without Nelson and Dobson, this team just isn't that good. They'll almost certainly miss the playoffs. It's just a matter of where they're going to be drafting. The 2026 season feels more like survival mode than playoff talk for the Penguins. The core that has once defined an era is fading away, and while the franchise hasn't hit the full rebuild button yet, it's getting harder to justify calling this team a serious threat or even a threat at all. Dan Muse takes over behind the bench, but he takes over a roster that looks very lackluster. Crosby is still the heartbeat of this team, obviously, and as long as he's in uniform, you can't completely rule out Pittsburgh. But the support system around him is very thin. Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang are nearing the end, and though Rickard Rakell and Brian Rust had strong years, it's tough to expect career best numbers again. Young forwards like Rutger McGorty and Ville Koivunen will get chances, but it might be asking for a little bit too much for them to chip in. Obviously, Erik Karlsson is still a weapon, but the depth behind him is very shaky, and Letang's durability is always a question. In net, Tristan Jarry and Archer Shilovs don't really inspire much confidence, which could leave Pittsburgh chasing games more often than controlling them. Realistically, Pittsburgh looks like a team headed for another season on the outside looking in. It is an exciting time to be a Flyers fan. After years of struggle and roster turnover, 2026 feels like one of those seasons where you finally want to lean in and believe. With Rick Tocchet taking over behind the bench, the club is trying to reset the culture after what Torts did. They need to inject it with urgency and give young players a real chance. The rebuild isn't fully done, obviously, but the blueprint seems like it's done. Matvei Michkov made waves as a rookie and now carries pretty high expectations. Konechny, Couturier, and Tippett bring balance, experience, and scoring punch also. The acquisition of Zegras adds a dynamic option up front, and if he rebounds, he could be a top-line game changer. The defense, though, is where things get a lot less certain. Jamie Drysdale is the clear building block, but behind him, it's really nothing. The Flyers might not be playoff ready just yet, but they're finally fun again. Michkov's rise, Zegras' arrival, and all that they have going on is going to give fans a reason to watch. Moving on to the Atlantic Division, the Maple Leafs enter 2026 with a massive question hanging over them. What do they look like without Mitch Marner? For years, the core four has defined Toronto hockey, and now that one piece is gone, the Leafs are forced to redefine themselves on the fly. Matthews is still the franchise centerpiece, but he'll be carrying more weight than ever. Without Marner, the search for a new running mate is on. Matias Maccelli and Max Domi are candidates to slide into that playmaking role, while Matthew Knies, coming off a 29-goal breakout season, is expected to take another step forward. William Nylander remains a lethal scorer, and John Tavares, freshly extended, provides stability down the middle, but the chemistry that once felt automatic now has to sorta be rebuilt. On the blue line, the question continues. If it all clicks, Toronto could blaze through the Atlantic again, but if things don't mesh well without Marner, this could be a long, frustrating ride, and the window on this core might feel even narrower. People have been calling for the wheels to fall off this wagon for a few years now, but Tampa Bay keeps proving them wrong. Up front, Nikita Kucherov remains the heartbeat and one of the few guaranteed threats you can build around. Back-to-back Art Ross trophies, and it still feels like people are not talking about him enough. But he can't do it all alone. Braden Point has been a dependable complement and will be leaned on even more. Gensel has merged well into this team, and the rest of the supporting cast must step up. If veteran depth falters or role players regress, the offense could feel pretty thin. Victor Hedman is still the stabilizing figure on defense, but age and wear begin catching up. If the back end can't mask breakdowns or stay consistent, that leaks straight into the standings. And of course, they have the cat in net, who can outplay any goalie in the league when he's at the top of his game. Tampa Bay's core still has fight, still has moments, but to stay in the hunt, they'll need younger players to emerge, defense to tighten, and the stars to really carry that weight. If all that doesn't align, this could be one of those seasons where the Lightning remind us just how quickly cycles shift. But if the roster performs like we know it can, watch out. The Florida Panthers are the NHL's modern dynasty in the making. Back-to-back Stanley Cups have cemented their place at the top of the league, and they don't look like a team ready to slow down anytime soon. Few rosters combine elite star power, physicality, and depth the way Florida does, which is why the three-peat conversation is very real. Sam Reinhart is fresh off another big year and locked in long-term. Alexander Barkov remains one of the league's best two-way centers, and Matthew Tkachuk, once healthy, brings the edge and the playoff firepower that defines this group. Brad Marchand is also back and looking to continue his dominant playoff form into the regular season, giving Florida yet another proven weapon who thrives when the lights are brightest. Add in Carter Verhaeghe and Sam Bennett, plus reliable depth from Eetu Luostarinen and Anton Lundell, and it's clear that this forward group can overwhelm opponents and is easily the best in the league. On defense, the Panthers are every bit as dangerous. Aaron Ekblad and Gustav Forsling form one of the best pairings in hockey, and the addition of Seth Jones late in the season only makes an already elite blue line more elite. The Panthers have proven themselves as the golden standard in the NHL, and this group that they have this year is every bit as good as last year's, and they're going to be going for their third straight Stanley Cup. After finally ending their playoff drought, the Senators enter 2026 with momentum and higher expectations. Up front, the young core drives the story. Brady Tkachuk remains the engine, while Timmy Stu continues to evolve into a superstar. Drake Batherson, Dylan Cousins, and Claude Giroux all provide balance and depth scoring, though the bottom six still has to prove it can ship in consistently. On defense, Jake Sanderson is the anchor, but there are questions behind him. Ottawa is banking on players like Tyler Klevin and newcomer Jordan Spence to grow into steady contributing roles. Ottawa has all the talent and all the tools to do more than just to sneak into the playoffs. If their core continues to rise and the defense holds, they could become legitimate contenders. There's a real buzz in Montreal heading into this season. The Canadiens snapped a 3-year playoff drought last season, and now they want to go even further. The group that carried the team into last year is still rolling. Captain Nick Suzuki is now a full-time leader, and Cole Caulfield put together a breakout season of 37 goals and 70 points. And they're truly only getting better. The hype around Ivan Demidov is insane, and he should make a lot of noise this season. Beyond that, veterans and mid-tier forwards have to step up to give depth so that the top line isn't overwhelmed. On defense, the spotlight shines brightest on Lane Hudson, fresh off the Calder Trophy win and a rookie campaign that set franchise rookie defender records for assists and points. He is the anchor, and he's going to be accompanied by Noah Dobson, who was brought in this summer, a major move to stabilize and upgrade the back end. In goal, Montreal needs consistency. The season showed flashes of promise from Montembeault and Dobej, but also uncertainty. The core is locked in, and the expectations for this team are real. If Suzuki, Caulfield, Hudson, Dobson, and even Demidov all rise together, the Canadiens could be very dangerous. Even if there are bumps, this season should feel like forward motion. The Red Wings come into their centennial season with a sense that something's getting ready to shift. They came close last year, made moves mid-season, and under Todd McClellan now have more structure, But this season has to feel like more than just inching forward. They finished 22nd in scoring last year, though their power play rebounded under McClellan to top marks. Marco Kasper, after a promising finish to 2025, is being counted on to assert himself as a top-line contributor. JT Compher also has to bounce back and provide secondary scoring. Meanwhile, veterans like Alex DeBrincat, Lucas Raymond, Dylan Larkin, and Patrick Kane will still carry the load offensively, but the difference makers might come from the young guys finally stepping up. Detroit leans on Moritz Seider and Simone Edvinsson, who will hopefully be healthy as the two supports on the back end. But behind them, you start to look at guys like Ben Sherratt and Travis Hamonic and start to worry. They'll need someone, maybe Albert Johansson or Jacob Bernard Docker, to emerge and stabilize the third pairing. In goal, the team made a splash by acquiring John Gibson to finally have a reliable starter. This year is more telling than fun. If the youth can step up, Gibson holds the fort, and Detroit's stars stay healthy, they could be knocking on the door of the playoffs. But if they stumble again, the questions around the Yzer plan will only get louder. I don't even know what to say about this team anymore. The Sabres are built on potential, hype, and a sprinkle of what if, but damn, do they need everything to go perfectly for anything to stick. They're banking heavily on Yuri Kolic and Zach Benson to make the jump into top 6 contributing roles. Both are still very young, and while they flash potential, asking them to deliver 20 to 30 goals and 65 plus points is a big ask, especially given where the team is right now. Where they do need to lean on for offense is Tage Thompson. You can probably expect 35 plus goals and 70 plus points, but he's the main driver up front. The good news is he's not entirely alone. Alex Tuch gives them another proven top 6 scorer who can push play and produce in bunches, and it is worth remembering, despite their struggles, the Sabres were still one of the better offensive teams in the league last year. The firepower is there, but it needs to be matched with good defense and goaltending, which they do not have. Rasmus Dahlin is obviously one of the best defensemen in the league, but outside of him, they need Byram to take a step and Owen Power to contribute this season. If all these pieces click, then playoffs aren't entirely out of the question, but there are so many what-ifs stacked against them that it's probably going to be another disappointing season in upstate New York. The Bruins come into 2026 knowing that they are not built to contend right now. Last season's collapse was a sign that this roster needs a serious retool. The depth up front just isn't good enough. The blue line behind Charlie McAvoy is shaky, and outside of spurts, the secondary scoring simply isn't enough. It's likely going to be another tough year in Boston. But here's the thing, as long as you have David Pastrnak, Charlie McAvoy, and Jeremy Swayman, you have the blueprint for a quick turnaround. Pastrnak is still one of the best pure scorers in the game. McAvoy is a true number 1 defenseman, and Swayman has all the talent to be a franchise goalie. Those are cornerstone pieces that most teams spend years trying to find. So while the Bruins may struggle again this season, the focus shifts to building around that trio. If management can get the right pieces in place, whether through prospects, trades, or free agency, this doesn't have to be a long rebuild. The window is closed for now, but the foundation for the next one is already sitting in the locker room. Expect a lot of growing pains and another year outside the playoff picture. But with Pastrnak, McAvoy, and Swayman all locked in, Boston has a faster path back than most teams in their spot. The Eastern Conference has been the center of the hockey universe lately. The last 2 Stanley Cup champions have come out of the East, and once again, it feels like the road to the Cup runs straight through this side of the bracket. From powerhouses like Florida and Carolina to teams like Toronto and Tampa that are still clinging on to contender status, the top end of the East is stacked, and add in hungry squads on the rise, and you've got a conference that's brutal top to bottom. But as strong as the East looks, the story of this season won't be complete without looking at the West. And what better team to start with than the reigning President's Trophy winning Winnipeg Jets? 116 points, a league best goal differential, and an offense that was near the top in every key category. The big change, though, is the departure of Nikolai Ehlers, which takes away some speed and creativity from this offense. But it's still strong. Kyle Connor remains the go-to scorer, and Gabriel Vilardi is coming off a breakout year that showed he can be a real difference maker. Depth is going to be tested, but the Jets still have enough firepower up front to roll out dangerous top lines. On the back end, it all goes through Josh Morrissey, who continues to play at an elite level. Neil Pionk earned his long-term extension and will be counted on to back that up, but the blue line has to stay steady for Winnipeg to repeat last year's success. Connor Hellebuyck is still the backbone in between the pipes, and when he's on his game, the Jets can beat almost anyone, and he remains one of the best goalies in hockey, but the playoffs are always a question for him. The Jets don't have much room to slip. If Connor and Vilardi keep producing, Morrissey anchors the defense, and Hellebuyck stays strong, Winnipeg will stay near the top of the standings. But after last year's President's Trophy run, expectations are sky high, and anything less than another big season is going to feel like a big letdown. The Stars come into 2026 firmly in contender mode. 3 straight 100-point seasons and multiple deep playoff runs have put them right on the edge, but like Carolina in the East, they keep hitting that same wall. the conference final hump. Dallas has the talent to win it all. Now it's all about proving that they can finish the job. The Stars' forwards are loaded. The addition of Mikko Rantanen gives them another elite weapon to go along with Wyatt Johnston, Jason Robertson, Rupe Hintz, and Matt Duchene. It's a forward group that can score in waves. On defense, Miro Heiskanen and Thomas Harley lead a strong left side, but the right side still has questions. If these weaker D-men are forced into heavy minutes, the blue line can be exposed pretty quickly. For Dallas to take the next step, that part of the roster has to hold up under playoff pressure. They're a team that is built to win right now. The Stars have everything it takes to chase the cup, but until they clear that hurdle and get past the conference finals, the question will linger: can they finally finish the job? The Avalanche want 2026 to feel like this core can still win it all. After trading away Mikko Rantanen last season, they're now double or even triple downing on the upside of their stars and depth pieces. Everything funnels through Nathan MacKinnon. He's the heart and the engine, and when he's on, Colorado becomes dangerous. Marty Necas, who was acquired in the Rantanen trade, gives them a strong top-line partner and adds a strong scoring threat alongside him. Nichushkin also gives the top six more physicality and net front presence, given that's when he's in the lineup. Further down, Gabriel Landeskog is attempting a comeback this season, and if his legs and knees hold, his leadership could re-inject that veteran sense into that room. Cale Makar continues to redefine what a modern blue liner can be. He just won his second Norris Trophy and still impacts both ends of the ice. Supporting him is Devon Taves, who quietly does a lot of the dirty work so that Cale Makar can thrive. He takes away space, handles transitions, and is always smoothing out Makar's aggressiveness so the pair doesn't get exposed. The one wild card is going to be durability. The Avs used 49 different players last season because of injury, and that kind of turnover can bite you hard throughout the season. But with all that said, they're still built to win. They may have to grow into that this season, but with MacKinnon, Makar, and now a deeper top six, they have the pieces. A lot of the success hinges on whether or not Blackwood can stay sharp, but if he does, the Avs are in cup conversation yet again. They say patience is a virtue, but in Minnesota, they might be running low. The Wild are no longer a sleeper team. 2026 is shaping up as one of those seasons where the core either forces its hand or fans start demanding answers. Kirill Kaprizov runs the offense. He's coming off injury, and after rejecting that monster contract, I don't know how much longer he has in Minnesota. Whether he stays or goes, the Wild's push this year leans heavily on him. Alongside Kaprizov, players like Matt Boldy, Joel Cernak, and young guys like Marco Rossi need to step forward as consistent producers. Faber and Boyum are the young studs on D who are going to lead this new wave of Wild hockey, but the blue line still carries risk, especially when injuries hit, but there is more balance this season than in previous years. At this point, it really feels like the Wild are right on the edge of breaking through. They've got the talent to make some noise, and they can absolutely be a playoff team, possibly due for a deep run, but with expectations climbing every single year, coming up short again would sting. The St. Louis Blues have something to prove in 2026. They're not tearing it down, but they're not finished either. Stuck in the middle ground where every season feels like a test of whether or not they're moving forward or just staying put. Last year's heartbreaking Game 7 loss showed that they can hang around the best, but now the challenge is turning flashes of potential into real consistency. Towards the end of last season, the Blues were one of the hottest teams in the entire NHL heading into the playoffs, thanks to their forward group finally clicking. Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou led the charge, while Dylan Holloway, Pavel Buchnevich, and Jake Neighbors all chipped in to give St. Louis a balanced attack. The big question is whether they can sustain that level over a full season. Rookie Jimmy Snuggerud, fresh out of college, is pushing for a roster spot and could add even more of a spark to the middle six. And while the forwards give them firepower, it always seems to come back to Jordan Binnington. He's a big game goalie who thrives in the spotlight, and if he's locked in, the Blues are never out of a series. This team has a mix of youth and vets that could surprise. If Thomas and Kyrou stay elite, Snuggerud earns his minutes, and Binnington carries the weight, St. Louis can push into the playoff picture yet again. The Utah Hockey Club finally has an identity, and although it's not the Yeti, we'll see the Mammoth take the ice in the 2026 season, and they can make some noise. The attack is built around Captain Clayton Keller, the steady finisher who sets the tone every single night and is one of the most underrated superstars in this league. Alongside him, Dylan Guenther is showing signs of becoming a consistent top-line goal scorer, while Logan Cooley provides the creativity and flash that makes this team so exciting. Add in the newcomer JJ Peterka, and you've got a forward group with real potential. Utah won't be expected to dominate, but there's real identity forming right now. With just how dangerous their offense is starting to look, this team can be a lot better than people think this year. If everything holds up, the Mammoth could make some noise in the Western Conference playoff race. The Preds were the so-called winners of the offseason, but wound up finishing dead last offensively and missing the playoffs by 28 points. They need redemption. If they don't rebound this season, fans will start wondering if this was all for nothing. Offensively, the biggest problem was center depth. They ranked 31st in offense, including dead last in 5 5-on-5 scoring. Philip Forsberg still led the team in goals, assists, and points, but those numbers were noticeably a drop-off from his prior years. In 2026, they're going to lean heavily on him, but the question is, who else can step up? I mean, they got guys like Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, Ryan O'Reilly, who have done nothing since they got there, and it's time to turn up the heat. On defense, the unit was exposed big time. 274 goals against and 191 at 5-on-5 were among the worst in the entire league. In net, it's obviously still UC Saros, but his performance has slipped over the past few years, and now he's carrying an 8-year contract. The Predators are really hoping he can reclaim some of his prior Vezina form. For Nashville, the formula isn't that complicated. They need to score more, defend better, and get Saros back to being the Rock he used to be. That's obviously easier said than done, but I can't imagine it gets much worse than whatever the hell happened last year. The Chicago Blackhawks are still deep in their rebuild. No one's expecting them to contend right now, but what the fans want is progress. This season isn't about wins and losses as much as it's about seeing Connor Bedard and the young core take real steps forward. Bedard is the centerpiece and everything runs through him. Around him, players like Frank Nazar and Sam Renzel represent the next wave of Blackhawks hockey. Scoring was obviously a huge issue last year, and Chicago finished near the bottom of the league in offense, but there were some positives. The power play showed flashes of promise, and Burakovsky's addition should help spread things out. Chicago obviously is not built to win right now, but that's not the point. If Bedard takes another step, the prospects start to look comfortable, and the team shows more structure, it'll be a successful year. The rebuild is still in motion, but this season is about proving the foundation is working. The Vegas Golden Knights are going all in again. This is a team built to win right now, and anything less than a deep run is going to feel like a letdown. The big move was trading for Mitch Marner, giving Jack Eichel a high-end running mate. Those two together could be one of the scariest duos in the league, and with players like Mark Stone and Dorofeyev still around, scoring is not going to be an issue for this team. The questions come on the blue line. Alex Pietrangelo is dealing with hip issues all season, and that puts more pressure on Noah Hanifin to step into a bigger role. This defense has the pieces, but it needs to hold up when the games get tough. Vegas put their faith in Adin Hill with a big extension, and he's been steady before, but now he has to prove he can carry the load over a full season. Vegas has all the talent to win the West. If Marner and Eichel click, this team will be even more dangerous than they've been in the past. LA's fate has been at the hands of Edmonton for 4 straight years, and they hope that this year is a little bit different. This season marks a new era in LA, especially with Anze Kopitar retiring after this season. It's both a farewell tour and the test of whether the next generation is ready to carry things forward. The attack is being reshaped around younger pieces. Alex Laferriere earned a big extension after a breakout year, and Quinton Byfield continues to develop into a top-line forward. Adrian Kempe remains a reliable goal scorer, Kevin Fiala is capable of carrying stretches with his speed and playmaking, and Andrei Kuzmenko is going to add another layer of offense. Drew Doughty still brings leadership and minutes, but he can't carry the load on the back end forever. They got guys like Mikey Anderson and Brant Clark too, but the rest looks a little bit shaky. Kopitar's farewell tour sets the stage, but the Kings' success depends on their solid offensive depth and the rising core proving that they can keep this team competitive. Maybe, just maybe, this is the year that they can finally beat Edmonton. But that might be tough because I don't think there's a single team more due than this one. Led by the 2 best players in the world, the Oilers are coming off back-to-back Stanley Cup final losses. Anything this team does on offense usually funnels through McDavid and Draisaitl, who are likely going to be starting the year on the same line due to Hyman's injury. But the one worry is McDavid's contract. He's a free agent at the end of this year, and they have yet to re-sign him, and another season without a cup only adds fuel to the worry that Edmonton's not going to be able to keep him around. But they did add some pieces around him to make this year the year. Andrew Mangiapane, Isaac Howard, and Matt Savoie will try to round out the depth so the scoring on this team should still be elite. They have the Bushbaum on D, who just signed a huge extension. Ekholm, Nurse, Wallman, the defense actually seems pretty good. Now it's going to hinge on the play of Stuart Skinner, who's going to be under a microscope. Everything points to another cup chase, but the longer McDavid goes without one, the louder the contract questions will get. The Oilers are good enough to win it all. They just need to do it before the clock runs out. The Flames actually surprised a lot of people last year. 96 points, almost a playoff berth, showing the flashes of life in this rebuild. But they still fell short. Now the question is, can they build on that spark, or does this become an almost again? Their offense runs through Nazem Kadri, who led the team with 35 goals and 67 points last season. He's their workhorse, taking more shots than anyone else and carrying the load. Supporting him is Jonathan Huberdeau, who showed flashes, especially on the power play and in his usage. But beyond those two, the scoring depth is very thin. Defensively, the group has to be tighter. Between the pipes, they finally have their guy, Dustin Wolf. He's becoming the backbone of this rebuild, and if he continues growing, Calgary might finally have the stability and goal they've long needed. Last season was a hint at what this team could do, but with their flaws exposed last year, nothing comes easy. The Canucks head into 2026 knowing it's time to get back on track. Last season's playoff miss stung, and the pressure is squarely on their core to deliver. The biggest storyline is Elias Pettersson. After a disappointing year by his standards, Vancouver badly needs him to bounce back and look like the franchise centerpiece yet again. Brock Besser, fresh off signing long-term, also has to put up another strong season, and behind them, Filipino is being counted on to show that he can hold down the number 2 center spot. Quinn Hughes remains the heart of this defense and one of the league's best puck movers, but he'll need help because if the unit leans too heavily on him, cracks are going to show. The Ducks are trying to climb out of the basement and finally turn potential into progress. Their forward group has plenty of talent to build around. Leo Carlsson is the crown jewel of that rebuild, already looking like a franchise center who can drive play. Troy Terry remains one of the most reliable scorers and leaders. Add in the potential return of Mason McTavish if his contract situation gets sorted, and the new faces like Chris Kreider and Mikael Granlund, and Anaheim suddenly has a forward group that can create real offense. In goal, the team has officially turned the page on John Gibson and welcomed in Lucas Dostal as the starter of the future. The pieces are starting to come together. The Ducks could finally push out of the basement and start making noise in the wildcard race. The Kraken are still trying to figure out who they are. In 4 years, they've had some good moments, but they haven't found real consistency. The offense is going to lean heavily on Matty Beniers, who keeps taking on more responsibility, and Kapokako, who showed some promise after joining the team last year. Shane Wright seems like he's figuring it out, and they can count on Jared McCann for 35+ goals. But losing Burakovsky is going to hurt. They need guys to step up and cover that gap. Seattle has some talent and a few promising names, but not enough to stack up against the deeper teams in the West. The Sharks might be terrible on paper, and they probably will lose most of the nights, but they're one of the most fun teams in hockey right now. You've got Macklin Celebrini, who was just said to be the new face of hockey, voted over Connor Bedard. Will Smith is coming off a solid rookie stretch and expected to push harder. Add William Eklund and Tyler Toffoli into that mix, and you've got a forward group that can spark something on any given night. Don't expect the playoffs. The Sharks likely won't be competitive night in and night out, but that's not the point this year. It's about growth, energy, and glimpses into what's coming. This NHL season is set to be wild and unpredictable. You've got teams chasing revenge, teams fighting for respect, and one team chasing a three-peat. If you stuck around this long, make sure to subscribe. There's going to be a lot more hockey content like this all season long.